Stick or twist, the choice is yours. Bonjour ladies and gents, welcome to another episode of Kylie Retrospectives, a series in which we look at the discography of Miss Kylie Minogue in the lead up to her new album, Disco, which comes out on the 6th of November, at the time of recording. I am ElliXia Valentine, Malvern's answer to Ruth Langsford. Today, we're taking it back to 1994 to talk about Kylie's self-titled 5th album, Kylie Minogue. We also have it in a lovely vinyl pressing as well. Just look at that. Look at how pure and clean and wonderful that is. I'm just gonna come straight out the gate and say it. Kylie Minogue is one of my favourite albums of all time. Definitely one of my favourite of hers. I absolutely love it. So you're in for a video of me basically gushing about how much I love this album. So I hope you're ready. Buckle up. Today's look, I'm semi-inspired by the album cover. You know, she was going for a sort of sophisticated lady kind of thing. A lot of black and white as well, hence, you know, all this. She even put on some specs as well. But I decided the look was better without them. I look really nice today. Just saying. So Kylie Minogue was released on the 19th of September 1994. It was her first album with a new record label, Deconstruction, and the very first album she released to not feature any contributions from Stock Aitken Waterman. The album reached number 4 on the UK Albums Chart, and it had the singles Confide in Me, Put Yourself in My Place, and Where Is the Feeling, in brackets, BIR Dolphin Mix. I've already talked about how much I love this album, so to quote the last one, let's get to it. For the sake of simplicity, we're going to refer to this album as KM94, just because I think saying the name Kylie Minogue, I say the name Kylie enough in these videos and in my day-to-day life as well. So I figured let's just say KM94. This could easily turn into a drinking game of drink every time I say the word Kylie. Anyway, so as usual, we'll start with the singles. Up first, we have Confide in Me. And to quote Whitney Houston, but wow, what a moment. A moment that is most pleasing to me in Kylie's career. That's not the quote verbatim. Confide in Me is just divine. I love Confide in Me. I think Confide in Me is one of those songs that is just objectively brilliant. I think even if you don't like Kylie, if you're not a fan of Kylie, you can't deny Confide in Me is a solid gold song. It's a masterpiece. Like I said, it was her first single to be away from the Stock Aitken Waterman production. It was her first single in a new record label, and it was also her first single in 2 years as well. So there was a lot to prove. Now, I'm obviously too young to remember Confide in Me's release because I was only 2 at the time. My memory is good, but it's not that good. Confide in Me was like such a turning point in her career because it showed Kylie as a lot more serious. It's a very mature track, it's very sophisticated, and I actually think it's very timeless as well. It's probably the first single from Kylie's career at this point that could be from any era. Maybe I'm biased, I don't know, but I don't care. She's encouraging her lover to confide in her, she's encouraging people to open up. It's a beautiful song, and it gets done on tour a lot as well. It's definitely become a classic in Kylie's discography and a firm fan favourite as well. And it's incredibly justified in doing so because it is just sublime. I could do a whole video about how much I love Confide in Me, but I think let's maybe branch onto the other songs. You know, there are 9 other tracks in this album, it's only fair we talk about them. I mean, those 9 other tracks as well are pretty good. I mean, like I said, this is one of my favourite albums of all time. Confide in Me reached number 2 in the singles chart. Cruelly, cruelly held off the top spot by Saturday Night by Whigfield. I have an irrational hatred for that song. I really can't stand it. Every time I'm in a club and it comes on, that's usually my chance to go to the toilet or go outside and get a bit of fresh air. No shade to Miss Whigfield. Miss Whigfield, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. Much respect, you must have made a good amount of money off that song, so props to you, power to you. I know it's popular floor filler, but sorry. But maybe my irrational disdain subconsciously comes from the fact that it blocked Confide in Me from being a number 1. I don't know. Anyway, let's move on to the next single. Then we have the second single, Put Yourself in My Place, which is just a gorgeous, sublime, divine ballad. I think sublime and divine are probably the words of the day. It's slow, it's classy, it's elegant. It feels very autumnal to me. Like when I first heard the song, I envisioned autumnal forest, crisp blue skies with like a frost on the leaves. It very much invokes that imagery for me. So I have to give props to whoever listens to Put Yourself in My Place and conceives the music video idea in which Kylie is doing a striptease in a spaceship. Furthermore, actually, I have to give props to Kylie for making that look classy and elegant as well. Like, how? How does she do it? Put Yourself in My Place is just so stunning though. Like, every time I listen to it, I always feel just like, oof. I would actually say it is Kylie's best ballad, or at the very least, it's a contender for that title because it is just so timeless. It's so classic and it's very sophisticated as well. I just think it's stunning. Then we have the third single, Where Is the Feeling? Now the album version of Where Is the Feeling is probably the closest song on this album to sound like a previous material. It's quite perky and it's up-tempo, but it's still got a very classy, dignified edge to it. Then you have the single version, which was the Brothers in Rhythm Dolphin remix, which completely flips the song on its head. A lot of the song becomes spoken word. It's quite an experimental track for Kylie as well. It's not massively radio friendly. It's a little bit of a surreal version of the song, but I love it. I actually really prefer the single version. Where Is the Feeling is quite an obscure Kylie single actually, because it never gets performed on tour. I don't think she's ever performed it on tour actually. And the only greatest hits album that's ever been included on is Hits Plus, which was a sort of budget compilation that Deconstruction did in 2000, which included their singles from their era and a bunch of unreleased stuff as well. Maybe we'll cover Hits Plus in another video. Maybe, I don't know, I haven't decided that far ahead yet. Then we go into the album tracks. One thing that sets this apart from her other albums is that all the track lengths are actually quite long. You know, your standard pop song is about 3.5 minutes, and anything that goes beyond that, anything that goes beyond sort of 4 minutes is considered to be quite long. This album, I think this, does it have the timers on here? No. This album's shortest track is 4 minutes and 33 seconds, I believe. Everything else pretty much goes over 5 minutes. One song is even nearly 8 minutes long as well, actually, which for pop music, especially for Kylie, is a very long length. Album tracks wise, track number 2 is Surrender, which is a nice sort of, again, very sophisticated mid-tempo number. I think sophisticated is also the word of the day. This album has sophistication just running through it. Surrender is relatively sexual as well, you know. By this point, we knew Kylie could be sexy. There's quite a lot of and all that kind of stuff. There's some like talking bits. It's very sultry. Then we have If I Was Your Lover, which is a bit more of a sort of R&B funky kind of song. I sounded so white then. It's kind of like an R&B funky kind of song. I don't really know how else to describe it. Again, it's fairly sultry, it's fairly sexual. There's another spoken word bit as well, which is like, if I was your lover, I'd hold you from dusk till dawn. And it's like, oof. If I Was Your Lover is very confident sounding, you know, you can imagine strutting to it. It's very like, even though the lyrics are thirsting over somebody, it's still very confident. It's kind of like, if I was your lover, but there's no if, because I'm gonna be. To be fair, there are quite a few spoken word highlights on this album. Another one actually is in the Where Is the Feeling single remix, where she's like, there's nobody better, better than you. You make me feel happy. Happy to know you. Then we have what is possibly one of my favourite Kylie album tracks, and that is Dangerous Game. It's so sophisticated, it's so... Can you hear my boiler? I'll stop in a minute. Dangerous Game is very dramatic. It's quite slow and it starts off quite understated, but it builds and builds and builds. And then that last climax is just... She sings about how her unrequited love has left her feeling like she's died and how she is so lonely and she needs this boy that she's just lost without. And if you can't relate to that, pronoun swap maybe. And you're a liar. I've always wanted to perform Dangerous Game at a gig. I've never been able to find a backing track for it, so if anybody has one, hit me up. but I've always wanted to perform it in like a really nice gown with, you know, that kind of hairstyle that's like sort of slicked back and long and be really glamorous and just belt it out. You know, a bit like Paloma Faith at the Brit Awards 2015, which is like Only Love Can Hit Like This. That kind of vibe. But yeah, Dangerous Game is stunning. I love it so much. Actually, something that is worth talking about on this album as a whole is Kylie's vocals. They are a drastic improvement from what we had before. She belts like she's never belted before. Dangerous Game, in the middle eight, she hits a really good high note that she holds for a long time as well. And like I've said before, and I'll probably say it again, she's not a renowned vocalist, she's no Whitney, Mariah, etc, etc. But credit where it is due, Kylie Minogue, 94, really showcases her voice really well, and at this point in her career, it's the best she's ever sounded. Then we have Automatic Love, which is another ballad, and you guessed it, another sophisticated number. It's very sensual. It's actually a very similar sounding song to Surrender, but it's kind of like Surrender's older sister that's better at everything. No shade, Surrender, of course. It's almost a bit too sensual. I remember I used to work at a retirement village cafe, which was obviously populated by elderly people, and I made a playlist to put on whenever I was on shift of like basically any music in my music library that was mid to low tempo, didn't have too much over singing, and didn't have any references towards sex or bad language. A lot of Kylie ballads on that playlist, you know, I was trying to educate the old folks. But Automatic Love came on and I was a bit like, oh, I don't know, this doesn't feel like it's appropriate for an old folks home. On a side note, those old folks don't know that I do drag, so don't tell them, please. You can tell them I don't work there anymore. Anyway, back on topic. You've got Put Yourself in My Place, Dangerous Game, and Automatic Love in a row, and that trio of ballads is just perfection to me. Definitely three of her strongest ballads. Amazing. I listened to this album on a train journey once, and it got to that point and I was just like, wow, why have I never noticed how well this album flows before? Then we go back up to Uptempo for track 7, which is Where Has the Love Gone? And it's the longest track on the album as well. It's not track 7, it's track 8. Whoops. It's the longest track on the album, clocking in at nearly 8 minutes long. It's very early 90s house sound. Not too dissimilar to what was on Rhythm of Love, but I would say it's more mature. It also has some nice vocals from a male vocalist whose name I don't know, because he's not credited. Let me have a look in the booklet, hold on. This is the 2003 re-release, and it has liner notes. So let me just consult it. Bear with. Oh, Time Will Pass You By as a cover, I didn't realise that. Should have done my research. Where are the credits? Literally, I can't even find the writing credits. Oh, are they at the bottom of the track? Oh, here we are. No, I can't find his name, unfortunately. But he has a nice voice, so props to him. Where Has the Love Gone probably doesn't quite need to be as long as it is. I would say it's the only track on the album that maybe goes on a little bit too long, but it's still really good and it's still great to listen to, so hey, you know, more of it, that's fine by me. I'm nitpicking really, because actually I think it is really good. So do you know what, forget I said that. Up next we have Falling, the penultimate track, which is another house number. It's very, again, sophisticated and it's understated, has a lot of spoken word in it as well. Very sensual. I think we can just basically sum this album up with sensual, sophisticated, spoken word, good vocals, long tracks. Falling was actually written by the Pet Shop Boys, and it was conceived as a remix to Go West before giving it to Kylie. And then we have Time Will Pass You By, which I just learned is a cover, actually. Probably should have read this before I started the video. Cover of a song by Toby Legend. It's a very up-tempo, upbeat, motivational, live for the moment, because time will pass you by kind of song. It's also had production from M People as well. I would say Time Will Pass You By is probably the weakest track on the album, but still Time Will Pass You By is a really fun track as well, you know. I say it's the weakest track, but it's the weakest in a very strong bunch. Then we of course have the B-sides. Only Confide in Me received B-sides this time. They were both covers as well. A cover of Prefab Sprouts' If You Don't Love Me, which is a really lovely understated ballad with a piano. It's completely done with the piano. She even performed it on the Aphrodite tour actually, and that was a really lovely sort of stop everything moment. Then we have Nothing Can Stop Us Now, which is a cover of the Saint Etienne song. Is that how you say their name? I don't know. I should know that again. It sounds very, very similar to the original version as well. It was actually also earmarked to be the lead single at one point, but thankfully Confide in Me was chosen, and it was the right decision, I think, definitely. We also have Love Is Waiting, a Japanese bonus track, which is another really up-tempo, fun song. For some reason, it reminds me of a game from like the PS1 era. I don't know why I feel that way. Also, a bunch of unreleased tracks that have leaked in the years gone by that didn't make the cut, unfortunately. At this point in her career, Kylie wanted to take a bit more creative control, and the reason why the album's called Kylie Minogue is because it's meant to be a reflection on who she is as a person, and it's a personal record. But Kylie actually only has one writing credit on the entire album, and that is Automatic Love. But a lot of the songs that Kylie co-wrote sadly didn't make the cut because of record label intervention. I don't want to go into too much detail with the leaks because I want to keep this series about official releases. But from the leaks that I've listened to, they do sound very good, in a very similar vein to the rest of the album as well. One of them, a song called Lovers on the Line, was even released as a single the following year by another artist, but I can't remember her name. I remember back in 2016, a record website said they were planning a re-release of this album to feature the unreleased tracks in HD, but sadly that just never came to anything, which is a real shame because I was looking forward to that. You know, with this album we see the birth of a new artist, a new singer coming through. It's almost as if she started again. We've already had quite a lot of keywords to sum this album up, but if I could actually sum this album up in one word, it would be underrated. Sadly, this album doesn't tend to get represented very much. The only song really that gets done on tour is Confide in Me. Occasionally Put Yourself in My Place might get a look in, but those two singles are the only ones that get included on Greatest Hits as well. This album also didn't get its own tour either, which was a real shame. This album is so cohesive and it flows so well. I don't see enough love for it online, and quite frankly that is a disgrace. I would love it if she referenced it more on tour, because there are some really fantastic songs on this album. It's something of a hidden gem in her discography, but it's so worth looking out. I can't recommend it enough. This album marked the beginning of a new era in Kylie's career. It showed her developing as an artist, as a woman. It's definitely growth in the right direction. I would say at this point in Kylie's career, it is her strongest album, and it is probably in my top 5, but to be honest, my top 5 Kylie records change all the time, but it's definitely in the upper half. So that does it for Kylie's self-titled 5th album. Thank you very much for tuning in. I've been ElliXia Valentine. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share this video, comment if you liked it, don't comment if you hated it, and tune in next week when we'll be discussing what is possibly the most interesting record in Kylie's career, Impossible Princess, or otherwise known as Kylie Minogue. Yes, I know, the last album we just discussed was called Kylie Minogue. We'll get into that next week. I've been ElliXia Q Valentine. Thank you very much once again for tuning in. Your love and support is always appreciated, and I hope you're all staying safe and staying well at the moment, because I know it's a little bit rubbish out there. Thank you very much for tuning in, and remember, please book me. Mwah.